So, the previous episode ended with us loading the car onto a truck with a crane and heading to the new workshop. Now, many of you are probably wondering, why not just order a tow truck with a winch? Why do we need this crane? After all, the car steers and the wheels turn. Just a little patience and you'll understand everything. At the moment, our projects and workshops are scattered all over the city. By the way, the bukanka is on the other side of town, in Andrei's workshop, and the carpentry workshop is in a third location. This is very inconvenient and extremely unproductive. And finally, we've all come together under one roof. And here, in fact, is the answer to why we need the crane truck. This is the only entrance to the workshop. Right now, construction and renovations are still underway. By the end of this episode, we'll have sorted out the entrance and show it to you. Now it's time to deal with the body panels. Andrei, with the call sign Drone Plasticine, took on this task. As we mentioned earlier, we'll pile on kilograms of filler onto the old Volga panels, shape them to perfection, then later make molds from them, and produce new fiberglass parts. As a result, we'll get lightweight, strong, and beautiful body panels with the correct geometry. But it's not all that simple or quick. This work actually took Andrei more than a month. That's exactly why he looks so tired, and just can't seem to gather his thoughts.
Let's keep slowly and carefully applying filler to our sculpture. We alternate. The direction in which we apply the filler. So if we spread one layer across the hood, the next layer we spread along the hood to cover up the grooves that form during filling. By the way, this is a really cool filler with a color indicator. At first it's blue, and then during the reaction it changes color, making it very clear that you shouldn't rush. And it's really great that you can clearly see that you shouldn't start sanding the filler yet. And when the filler has fully polymerized, when its curing reaction is complete, the blue color disappears completely. Once the curing reaction is finished, it turns white, which means you can start sanding it. Often, amateurs are in a hurry. They apply it, wait half an hour, and then start sanding this uncured filler, which clogs the sandpaper and is hard to sand. By the way, I recommend trying this filler with an indicator at least once. This isn't an ad, we're not being paid for this, though they could have.
But while Andrei is shaping the hood, Valera is working on the rear bumper. Let me suggest we refresh our memory a bit and briefly go over how it was made. First of all, we took the shape of the bumper from the 3D model, sliced it into layers, and then cut those layers out of polystyrene foam using a CNC machine. Then we assembled the structure that we had broken down in the 3D model pack, and ended up with a copy of the Bugatti Chiron bumper, though for now, it's just made of foam. We put this foam form into the body and, using filler, refined the shape to the desired condition. The next step was to lay several layers of fiberglass mat over the filled form, creating a mold that we'll use to make the fiberglass bumper. Or rather, Valera will make it. So it's his turn now. To get the highest quality part, you absolutely need the highest quality mold. Nothing less will do. We refine it using every possible method, with a Dremel, sculpting clay, filler, and prayers. By the way, just this part of the work alone took 4 days of 8 hours each. Valera. Once the mold is ready, you can carefully start laying in the materials and making the bumper. Not necessary to sand between layers of fillers. In fact, adhesion will be even better if... No, scratch that. It's enough just to make sure there are no lumps or other little things between the layers. You can go over it lightly with a spatula.
we've laminated our bumper. Let's go over the main points. We applied a release agent to the mold. After that, we applied gel coat, then 4 layers on a fiberglass mat with polyester resin. This is what the final casting looks like, but that's not all. Now, we still have to separate all of this. Let me tell you, it's not that easy.
As you can see, laminating a bumper of such a complex shape is only half the job. After that, you somehow have to get it out of the mold. Valera assures us that it's not so easy. And looking at this footage, I readily believe him. After a couple of hours of unsuccessful attempts, it became clear that there was no way around doing a craniotomy. We take a surgical tool from Bosch and in this simple way, free the part. Two hours later, Valera, the operation is complete and the patient looks like this. Meanwhile, work on the hood continues.
As you may have noticed, I've put Velcro on all or my tools for convenience. This is just regular Velcro from a sewing supply store. Sandpaper sticks perfectly to it. It's very convenient to use, especially convenient when you need to make something round. What's most interesting is that the combination of a square block, not and round sandpaper always works great. That's so my signature move. Now, right here, for example, there's this kind of curve. We bend this little rubber piece and sand. Excellent. Excellent. A single layer of masking tape is never enough. It will wear off immediately when it comes into contact with sandpaper. All right. So we've sanded the edge on one side, and now, without removing the old tape, we fit the other side. Next, we go over the scratch pattern with an electric or pneumatic orbital sander. We'll use 180 grit sandpaper, which will even out the scratch pattern and prepare the surface.
When the hood is primed, we use it as a reference to set the correct gap, meaning its fit against the fenders. We use an angle grinder to remove the excess, take off the fenders, and then follow the same process as with the hood. Layers of primer, sanding, Andre working day after day, and guide coat application. As a result, we achieve a perfect shape. We did most of the body filler work on the fenders in the previous episode. While the guys are working on the body, I went out to get some paint. At the paint shop, I told them about the project and asked them to match the paint color using a picture from my phone. So we came to pick out some paint, and I started thinking that last time we painted it, well, kind of like in that render, we had blue with white. And in order to see some difference, to understand and basically to vote on which color we should choose in the future, we need to do something completely different. So now I'm thinking of going with red and white. We'll also do a rough paint job. So now we'll pick a base color that's similar to this one, and then basically we'll bring it before the exhibition and show how it looks. I wanted to get as close to this as I could. It's like a candy color, right?
Haven't seen color pictures, sweet.
But it doesn't exist in real life. The designer imagined it.
It'll be hard to match. Exactly.
Well, I think this one will work. We don't really need an exact match.
We'll pick something as close as possible, paint it, and then see how it looks. In the end, we still managed to pick out the paint based on the picture from the phone. An awesome, rich cherry color. Its special feature is that, in the final stage, it's covered with a tinted red lacquer. And that's exactly when the magic happens. We also picked up a kit for chrome effect painting there. Personally, I'm really curious to test out this system. We'll definitely do that in the upcoming episodes. But if you want to see the results sooner, we'll be sure to post them in our Telegram channel on the very same day we finish painting. Unfortunately, we can't offer that kind of quick updates on YouTube. So the hood and fenders are ready for the final primer. All that's left is to finish up the doors. As you remember, the base of our project uses doors from a Ford, which is the foundation for our build. Now we need to attach the panel that replicates the Volga door seal. We did it in the first episode. First, we prep the surface. We sand it with a machine and use an angle grinder to remove any excess. The next step is to try to open up the seam sealer. After it finally worked, we degrease the surface and apply sealant to the spots where the overlay comes into contact with the door. I really hope it's exactly those spots and not somewhere nearby. To install the panel, we first carefully position it in the exact spot where it needs to go, making sure it fits snugly and lines up perfectly with the surrounding surfaces. We check for any gaps or misalignments, adjusting as needed to ensure a precise fit. Once the panel is in place, we use a marker to indicate the locations where it will be attached. Next, we select the appropriate drill bit and gently drill holes at each marked spot, taking care not to damage the panel or surrounding area. In the end, for some reason, Andre went over the surface with an angle grinder fitted with an abrasive disc. To be honest, I didn't understand why myself. I forgot to ask and I had to record the sound. After that mysterious angle grinder maneuver, you need to cover all the seams and installation marks with fiberglass. Here it's all by the book. Polyester resin, fiberglass, a roller, and half of Andre's day, which is to say 3 hours. I hope he knows what I mean. After the resin has dried, we cut off the excess. And then it's the usual routine. Lots of putty, sandpaper, Andre, you get the idea. Meanwhile, Valera is working on the rear bumper. On the original Bugatti, there's a spoiler like this which opens up and changes its angle. We're shaping the bumper according to its form, cutting off all the excess and fitting it to the main body. In fact, it's not even really a bumper. It's actually part of the body, since on the Bugatti it's a single-piece construction. We made it separately because it's easier to manufacture the part that way. Now all that's left is to put it all together. Here, we decided not to overcomplicate things and just fasten it with self-tapping screws, and for extra reliability, tape it up, as you can see. Of course, I'm joking. This is just a temporary fix for positioning, and the tape is there to prevent resin from leaking through the seams, since we'll be joining these two parts together with fiberglass mat. After the resin dried, we hurriedly started preparing the entire body for a rough coat of paint. The thing is, a couple of months ago, I promised the guys that we'd roll out an intermediate result of the Volgatti at a local car event called Location. And of course, true to tradition, we finished the painting and assembly at night, just a couple of hours before we had to leave. First, we started with the main body. We removed the old paint with solvent. By the way, these streaks actually worked perfectly as a guide coat. A guide coat is a thin layer of paint or special powder that helps you see where the surface has already been sanded and where more work is needed. The guide coat also gets into all the recesses, imperfections and marks left by coarse sandpaper. And after sanding, these areas stand out in contrast, provided of course that the color of the guide coat is drastically different from the color of the part. That's why I apply a dark guide coat to a light part, and then, after a couple of hours of sanding, it's ready for painting. By the way, these particular shots were filmed 15 hours before departure. That's why everyone who was in the workshop had to grab some sandpaper. Before painting the doors, hood and fenders, we fit them onto the body, check that they more or less align with each other, and right there on the spot, we install the Volga door handle. Once all the body panels are fitted, we can start painting. Andre worked a bit of magic here. He added a little bit of lacquer to the primer. And jumping ahead a bit, I'll say that this gave a really cool effect. The first layer we apply is white primer, which will also serve as the base for the red paint. Let me repeat. This is a rough paint job, done only to visually split the car into two colors, like in the concept, and to roll it out at the event. So the front part will be white. We'll leave it just like that, simply primed. But the rear part, the Bugatti half, will paint red. As you remember, I had previously picked out some awesome paint, but in the end, Andre refused to use it for such a rough paint job. Besides, the process also calls for a final coat of tinted red glossy lacquer. And considering that, at the moment, the surface of our shell is actually far from perfect. Covering it with gloss is a very bad idea, since gloss highlights every flaw and imperfection. So in the end, we just applied 2 coats of red base paint. When it dries, it becomes matte and actually looks pretty decent. In the previous episode, we made a template for the side windows. As you've probably realized, we don't have the actual windows yet, so we're painting what we have black. This doesn't take much effort at all, but it will significantly improve the appearance. But we already have the windshield. Or at least that's what we thought. Since the interior isn't ready yet, it makes sense to tint it. Andre, I bought the tint. Let's tint the windshield, so the interior can't be seen. The interior isn't ready, so, you know, it makes sense, right? Go ahead and tint it, please. As it turned out in a later conversation with Andre, and I quote, "I'm not some kind of tinter, I'm a painter, and the glass, I'm going to paint it, and as they say, the painter said it, the painter did it." And finally, the final assembly.
The cherry on top was supposed to be the windshield, but in reality it turned out to be more like a dried apricot than a cherry. Basically, the custom glass that took over a month to make to our exact measurements looks terrible. By the way, it cost us over $500, but we'll go into detail about that in the next episode. For now, we're just tossing it aside, since it's definitely without a doubt much better without it, honestly. Then comes the process of carefully loading everything up, and of course, as usual, running late, then the trip to the location. And now, the main question. Let's talk about the game. When you see it in person, how does its appearance compare to the images or photos you might have seen online? Does it seem larger, smaller, or perhaps not as impressive as you expected? We're curious to know if the real-life version matches your expectations, and what about the proportions? They are in fact considerably larger, especially when compared to before. Definitely, and in terms of proportions, it's much bigger, yes. Old cars, they always look better. Look at how many modern cars today are being tuned and modified. Old cars didn't need any tuning. They had the soul of the project's creator. In real life, it's much better, it's wider. The rear end is just so impressive. I realize there's still a lot of work to be done on it. But overall, you guys are doing great. I watch you all the time. My first impression was shock. I called my mom and told her, and she was shocked too. She said she'll definitely tell my dad as well. I think the main thing here is the hydrogen engine paired with 2 electric motors. At the very least, it works. And as for the V6 on the front left wheel, I think that's also a question. There was a $100 debate about what the dashboard is from. The dashboard in the 4Trop is not from the latest Tesla model. Ah, right. Yeah, 4Prop, that's correct. Without you guys, it's a cool project. I'll subscribe and keep watching because it's awesome. So cool. And what's it like in real life? The food is just super sexy. Is it decent? The height, oh, the width. The guys are being fed the right oats. They really know their stuff when it comes to design. It's a colossal amount of work. You can see it right away. Those who understand all this will get it. Those who don't understand it, well, as of today, they just won't get it. But it's obvious right away that there's an amount of work here. Keep up the good work. It looks way cooler in real life. Actually, the shapes don't quite come across. But when you see it in person, the proportions are just perfect. I can't even imagine the scale of this and how hard it is to pull off. For me, it's all just a mystery. On the monitor, it looks noticeably smaller. Smaller? Yes. So it's actually big, right? Comradely, no need to redo anything? No.
Thanks for watching. May your axe stay sharp.